I stood frozen in the hallway, my hand clutching the positive pregnancy test so tightly my knuckles turned white, while through the slightly ajar door, I heard my husband's cold, indifferent voice say the words that shattered my entire world. I don't care what happens to him, just make sure the divorce papers are ready by tomorrow morning. What would you do if the person you loved most wanted to erase you from their life, just as you were about to give them a family? Before we dive into this heartbreaking story of betrayal, secrets, and unexpected redemption, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and comment if you think everyone deserves a second chance. Now, let's find out what happens next. My name is Elian, and for the last 3 years, I have lived in a gilded cage. To the outside world, I am the envy of every Omega in the city. I am married to Damian Blackwood, the billionaire CEO of Blackwood Industries, a prime alpha whose power is only matched by his stunning, terrifying beauty. People see the diamonds around my neck, the penthouse view, and the arm of the most powerful man in the city wrapped around my waist at galas. They don't see the coldness in his eyes when the cameras stop flashing. They don't hear the silence that fills our home, a silence so heavy it feels like it could crush my bones. But today, the silence was broken. I was sitting on the edge of the bathtub, staring at the 2 pink lines on the plastic stick. Pregnant. I was pregnant. A rush of emotions hit me all at once: joy, terror, hope. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was the miracle that would finally melt the ice around Damien's heart. He had always said he didn't want distractions, that his empire was his only child. But surely his own flesh and blood would be different? My hands were trembling as I wrapped the test in a tissue and placed it in my pocket. I needed to tell him. Tonight was the annual Blackwood Charity Gala. It was the biggest night of the year for his company. I knew he would be stressed, but I foolishly thought that maybe, just maybe, this news would be the perfect gift. I dressed with extra care, choosing a soft, white silk suit that Damien had bought me for our first anniversary, back when he still looked at me with something resembling affection. I styled my hair, hiding the dark circles under my eyes with makeup, and practiced my smile in the mirror. "You can do this, Elian," I whispered to my reflection. "He loves you. Deep down, he loves you." I drove to the venue alone, as usual. Damien had gone ahead hours ago to handle business. When I arrived at the grand ballroom, the air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and powerful pheromones. Waiters navigated through the crowd with trays of champagne, and a string quartet played softly in the corner. It was beautiful, but to me, it felt suffocating. I scanned the room for him. It didn't take long. Damien commanded attention wherever he went. He was standing near the balcony doors, tall and imposing in a black tuxedo that fit his broad shoulders perfectly. He was talking to his lawyer, Marcus. I took a deep breath, my hand instinctively going to my pocket where the test lay hidden. I started to make my way toward him, dodging socialites who wanted to gossip. I was about 10 feet away when I saw the look on Damien's face. It wasn't the professional mask he usually wore. It was a look of pure annoyance. I stopped behind a large pillar, suddenly losing my nerve. I just wanted to hear his voice for a second, to gauge his mood before I approached. "The merger is finalized, Damien," Marcus was saying, his voice low. "But the board is concerned about your public image. A divorce right now could be messy." My heart stopped beating. "Divorce? I don't care about the mess, Marcus." Damien's voice cut through the air like a knife. It was that voice, the one he used when he was firing incompetent employees. Cold. Detached. "I want Elian out of the penthouse by the end of the week. Our contract was for 3 years. The 3 years are up. I have no use for a trophy wife who can't even handle the pressure of my world." "But surely," Marcus hesitated, "you should tell him personally? He seems attached to you." Damien let out a scoff that sounded like a gunshot to my soul. "Attached? He's pathetic, Marcus. He follows me around like a lost puppy. It's suffocating. I never wanted a mate. I needed a public figure to secure the family trust. I have that now. Just make sure the divorce papers are ready by tomorrow morning." I couldn't breathe. The room started to spin. The music, the laughter, the clinking of glasses, it all merged into a deafening roar in my ears. He never wanted a mate. He needed a public figure. Pathetic. I stumbled back, my hand clutching my stomach. My baby. Our baby. I was carrying the child of a man who looked at me as nothing more than a contractual obligation that had expired. I had to get out. I couldn't let him see me like this. I couldn't let him see the tears that were already burning my eyes. I turned and ran, not toward the exit, but toward the terrace doors on the opposite side of the room. I needed air. I needed to breathe. I burst out onto the cool night balcony, gasping for air. The city lights twinkled below me, indifferent to my pain. I gripped the stone railing, sobbing silently, my body shaking so hard I thought I might fall apart. I wouldn't jump if I were you, a deep, velvety voice spoke from the shadows. The fall won't kill you, but the scandal might. I jumped, spinning around. I hadn't realized I wasn't alone. Standing in the corner of the terrace, leaning casually against the wall with a cigarette in his hand, was a man I had only seen in magazines. He was taller than Damien, with messy dark hair and eyes that seemed to glow with a dangerous, golden intensity. He wore a suit that cost more than my life, but he wore it with a rebellious carelessness, top button undone, tie loose. Julian Thorne, Damien's archrival. The only alpha in the city who rivaled the Blackwood Empire. Damien hated him with a passion that bordered on obsession. I quickly wiped my eyes, trying to compose myself. I wasn't going to jump, I stammered, my voice thick with tears. Please excuse me. I tried to walk past him back into the ballroom, but he stepped in front of me. He didn't touch me, but his presence was a wall of heat and dominance. His scent hit me then, spiced rum and leather, intoxicating and strong. You're Elian Blackwood, Julian said, his eyes scanning my face with an intensity that made me shiver. Or should I say, the soon-to-be ex-Mr. Blackwood, judging by the fact that your husband is currently inside toasting to his newfound freedom with a group of investors. I flinched. So everyone knew. Was I the only one who had been living in a fantasy? That's none of your business, I snapped, trying to summon some of the dignity Damien claimed I lacked. Let me pass. Julian didn't move. He took a slow drag of his cigarette, watching me. You're shaking, Elian, and you smell distressed. Distress doesn't suit an Omega of your caliber. And what would you know about my caliber? I shot back, the anger momentarily overriding the grief. Julian smirked, a dangerous, predatory curve of his lips. I know that you're far too valuable to be thrown away like yesterday's trash. I also know that Damien is a fool. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. But what I'm really curious about is, what are you hiding in your pocket? My hand flew to my pocket instinctively. Nothing. You're a terrible liar, Julian drawled. You were clutching that pocket like it contained the nuclear launch codes when you ran out here. And your scent. He paused, his nostrils flaring slightly. His golden eyes widened a fraction. Interesting. Before I could ask what he meant, the balcony doors swung open. Elian. The voice was sharp, commanding. Damien. I froze. Julian didn't step away. Instead, he shifted slightly, positioning himself between me and the doors, shielding me. Damien stepped onto the terrace, his face a mask of irritation. I've been looking for you. We need to leave. The photographers wanna. He stopped dead when he saw Julian. The temperature on the balcony seemed to drop 20 degrees. Damien's eyes narrowed into slits. Thorne. Blackwood, Julian greeted, his voice dripping with mock politeness. Lovely party. Though your hospitality leaves something to be desired. You really shouldn't leave your beautiful husband crying on the balcony. It's bad for public relations. Damien's jaw tightened. He ignored Julian and glared at me. Elian, come here. Now, in the past, that tone would have made me obey instantly. It was the alpha command. But tonight, with the divorce words still ringing in my ears and the pregnancy test burning a hole in my pocket, I felt something new. Resistance. I didn't move. Damien's eyes flashed with anger. I said, come here. He's not going anywhere with you looking like that, Julian said calmly, flicking his cigarette ash over the railing. Stay out of this, Thorne, Damien growled, taking a threatening step forward. He is my husband. My Omega. For now, Julian said softly, but the words carried across the silence like a thunderclap. Damien stopped. He looked from Julian to me, realization dawning on his face that his conversation with Marcus might have been overheard. But instead of shame, his face hardened into cold indifference. Elian, Damien said, his voice lowering to a dangerous whisper. Do not make a scene. Get in the car. I looked at him. Really looked at him. The man I had loved for 3 years. The father of the child growing inside me. And I saw nothing but annoyed impatience. He didn't care that I was hurt. He only cared that I was embarrassing him. A wave of dizziness washed over me. The stress, the shock, the pregnancy hormones. It was too much. The world tilted sideways. I tried to speak, but my knees gave way. I expected to hit the hard stone floor. I expected pain, but I never fell. Strong arms caught me before I could touch the ground. A scent of spiced rum and leather enveloped me, grounding me. I've got you. Julian's voice rumbled against my ear, surprisingly gentle. Get your hands off him. Damien roared, rushing forward. Stay back. Julian's voice transformed, booming with an alpha authority that actually made Damien hesitate. It wasn't just a shout. It was a warning from a predator protecting its territory. Can't you see he's collapsing? You're suffocating him. I was fading fast, my vision blurring. I could see Damien's furious face, distorted and angry, and Julian's concerned golden eyes looking down at me. Damien, I whispered, my hand weakly reaching out, not for my husband, but to protect my stomach. The baby. It was a whisper, barely audible. But in the sudden silence of the terrace, it was loud enough. Damien froze. What? Julian went rigid, his arms tightening around me. He looked down at me, then at my hand covering my belly, and then up at Damien with a look of pure, unadulterated loathing. You didn't know, Julian realized, his voice ice cold. He looked at Damien with a mix of disgust and triumph. You truly are a fool, Blackwood. Damien was staring at my stomach, his face pale. Elian, what did you say? I couldn't answer. The darkness was pulling me under. The last thing I felt was Julian lifting me up into his arms, carrying me away from the man who broke my heart. And the last thing I heard was Damien shouting my name as Julian Thorne walked away with his husband. End of Chapter 1. Part 2. The first thing I registered was the smell. It wasn't the sterile, antiseptic sting of a hospital, nor was it the cold, metallic scent of the expensive cleaning products Damien insisted on using in our penthouse. This scent was rich, earthy, and overwhelmingly masculine. It smelled like dark roasted coffee, old books, and that lingering note of spiced rum and leather that had surrounded me on the balcony. I opened my eyes, blinking against the soft, golden light filtering through heavy velvet curtains. I was lying in a bed that felt like a cloud, the sheets made of a thread count so high they felt like water against my skin. But it wasn't my bed. The ceiling was painted with a Renaissance-style fresco, not the modern minimalist white I was used to. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the fog in my brain. I shot up into a sitting position, gasping as a wave of dizziness hit me. My hand flew instinctively to my stomach. The baby. Easy, Elian. You're safe. The voice came from the shadows of the room, deep and rumbling. I snapped my head to the left. Julian Thorne was sitting in a high-backed leather armchair, his long legs crossed, a book resting on his knee. He had shed his tuxedo jacket, and the sleeves of his white dress shirt were rolled up to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and ink, tattoos I had never seen in the magazines. Where am I? I croaked, my throat dry. Did I lose? You didn't lose the baby, Julian said, closing his book with a soft snap. He stood up, his movements fluid and predatory, like a panther stalking through tall grass. He walked over to the bedside table and poured a glass of water from a crystal pitcher. But you came close. Dangerously close. He held the glass out to me. I stared at it, then at him, hesitation paralyzing me. This was Julian Thorne, Damien's sworn enemy. The man Damien claimed would burn the city to the ground just to see Blackwood Industries fail. And I was in his bedroom? It's not poisoned, Omega, Julian said, a dry amusement in his tone. If I wanted to hurt you, I would have left you on that balcony to faint and crack your skull open on the stone. My cheeks flushed. I took the glass with a trembling hand and drank greedily. The cool water soothed my throat, helping to clear the last of the fog. Why am I here? I asked, lowering the glass. Why didn't you take me to a hospital? I tried, Julian said, his expression darkening. He leaned against the bedpost, crossing his arms. But as I was carrying you to my car, you were delirious. You kept begging me not to let him find you. You were terrified, Elian. Panic attacks induce stress hormones that are fatal to early pregnancies. Taking you to a public hospital, with the paparazzi swarming outside the gala, would have spiked your stress levels even higher. My private physician treated you here. I looked down at my hands, the memory of the balcony rushing back. Damien's cold face. The divorce. The way he looked at me with pure annoyance while I was crumbling. Damien, I whispered. Does he know where I am? Julian's jaw tightened, a muscle feathering in his cheek. He didn't answer immediately. He walked over to the window and pulled back the curtains slightly, looking down at the grounds of his estate. I sent him a message, Julian said, his voice dropping an octave. I told him you were safe and receiving medical attention. I didn't tell him where. He must be worried sick, I said, a habit of 3 years taking over. I started to push the covers off. I need to call him. I need to explain. Elian. Julian turned, his golden eyes blazing with a sudden, terrifying intensity. He isn't worried. I froze, one leg out of the bed. What do you mean? Julian walked back to the bed, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out his phone and tapped the screen a few times before holding it out to me. This was taken 20 minutes after we left the gala. I took the phone, my heart hammering against my ribs. It was a video from a gossip site. The headline read, Blackwood CEO unfazed by drama, business as usual. In the video, Damien was standing in the center of the ballroom, a glass of champagne in his hand, laughing at something an investor was saying. He looked fine. Perfectly, immaculately fine. There was no panic in his eyes. No frantic searching for his husband who had collapsed. He looked like a man who had just taken out the trash and was relieved the chore was done. A reporter thrust a microphone in his face. Mr. Blackwood, there are rumors that your husband fell ill and left with Julian Thorne. Is he okay? On the screen, Damien's face didn't even twitch. He took a sip of his drink and smiled that cold, practiced smile. Elian is prone to dramatic spells. He's fine. We are actually discussing the separation amicably. Now about the merger. The phone slipped from my numb fingers and fell onto the duvet. Separation. Dramatic spells. He wasn't just divorcing me. He was rewriting the narrative. He was painting me as the unstable, dramatic ex-husband before the papers were even signed. He didn't care that I was pregnant. He probably thought I had faked the faint for attention. A sob ripped its way out of my throat, violent and ugly. I curled in on myself, burying my face in my knees. It hurt. It hurt more than anything I had ever felt physically. The realization that the man I had devoted my life to, the man who sent used to be my only comfort, viewed me as nothing more than a PR inconvenience. I felt the mattress dip. Julian didn't touch me. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He just sat there, a silent, solid presence guarding me while I fell apart. His pheromones, usually aggressive and dominating, shifted. They became softer, wrapping around me like a warm blanket, a protective, soothing aura that only a prime alpha can project for a distressed omega. He doesn't deserve your tears, Julian said quietly after a long time. And he certainly doesn't deserve the child you're carrying. I lifted my head, wiping my swollen eyes with the back of my hand. I have nothing, Julian. I signed a prenup. If he files for divorce, I leave with nothing but the clothes on my back. I have no family, no career. I gave it all up for him. How am I supposed to raise a baby alone? You're not alone, Julian said. The certainty in his voice made me look at him. Why are you doing this? I asked, searching his face. You hate him. Is this just another way to get back at him? Am I just a pawn in your corporate war? Because if I am, please just let me go. I can't handle being used anymore. Julian's eyes softened, the gold melting into a warmer amber. He reached out, his hand hovering near my face before he seemingly decided against it and pulled back. I admit, seeing the look on Damien's face when I took you was satisfying, Julian confessed, his voice brutally honest. But that's not why you're in my bed, Elian. He stood up and paced the room, running a hand through his messy dark hair. Do you remember 3 years ago? Before the wedding? The charity auction at the Metropolitan Museum. I blinked, confused by the change of subject. Yes, that was the night Damien proposed. That was the night I was going to ask you out. Julian dropped the bomb casually, as if commenting on the weather. My mouth fell open. What? Julian stopped pacing and looked at me. I saw you across the room. You were laughing at some terrible joke a waiter made, and you looked radiant. Real. In a room full of plastic people and fake smiles, you were the only thing that felt alive. I started walking toward you, but I was too slow. Damien got there first. He put his hand on your waist, marked you with his scent, and claimed you. He let out a bitter laugh. I thought, well, Blackwood won. He surely sees what a treasure he has. So I backed off. I don't touch another alpha's mate. But then I watched. For 3 years, I watched him dim your light. I watched you turn from that radiant creature into a quiet, fearful shadow walking 2 steps behind him. And tonight, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Tonight, when I saw you on that balcony, looking like you wanted to jump, I realized that respecting a marriage, vow that he clearly doesn't respect, was stupid. I didn't help you to hurt him, Elian. I helped you because the thought of you and that baby being destroyed by his indifference made me want to burn the world down. The room fell silent. I stared at him, stunned. While I had been pining for Damien's crumbs of affection, Julian Thorne, the villain of the city, had been watching me. I don't expect you to trust me, Julian said, his voice returning to businesslike composure. But here is the reality. Damien has already mobilized his legal team. By tomorrow morning, you will be served with papers. He will cut off your access to the joint accounts. He will cancel your credit cards. He will try to make you destitute so you crawl back to him on his terms, or disappear entirely. I knew he was right. It was exactly Damien's playbook. What do I do? I whispered. You fight, Julian said. And you let me be your sword. I can't pay you, I said weakly. Julian smirked, the dangerous edge returning to his smile. I don't want your money, Elian. I have enough money to buy God. What I want is to see Damien Blackwood lose the one thing he thinks he owns. Me. No, Julian shook his head. His control. He walked back to the bedside table and picked up a folder I hadn't noticed before. He tossed it onto the bed. My lawyers drafted this while you were sleeping. It's a protection agreement. If you sign this, you become an employee of Thorn Enterprises. Specifically, my personal consultant. It gives you housing, a salary, and most importantly, it places you under my legal protection. Damien can't touch you without declaring war on me. And right now, with his merger pending, he can't afford a war. I opened the folder. The terms were generous. Insanely generous. It was a lifeline, but it was also a declaration of war. If I signed this, there was no going back. I would be crossing the line from Damien's husband to Damien's enemy. I looked at the ultrasound picture that Dr. Eris must have left on the nightstand. A tiny gray blur. My baby. Damien wanted to discard us. He wanted to erase us. I looked up at Julian. He wasn't looking at me with pity. He was looking at me with challenge. He was offering me power. He will come for you, I warned. When he finds out I'm pregnant, if he finds out, let him come, Julian said, his eyes gleaming. I've been waiting for an excuse to destroy him for a decade. Protecting you just makes it a pleasure. I reached for the pen sitting on top of the folder. My hand was still shaking, but not from fear anymore. It was from adrenaline. I signed my name, Elian Blackwood. No, Julian said gently. He reached out and took the pen from my hand, his fingers brushing mine. Sparks, electric and hot, shot up my arm at the contact. He looked deep into my eyes. From now on, you are just Elian. You define who you are, not him. Suddenly, a loud commotion erupted from downstairs. We heard shouting, the sound of heavy doors slamming, and the muffled voices of security guards. Julian didn't flinch, but his head tilted toward the door. Sir, a frantic voice came over the intercom on the wall. Mr. Blackwood is at the gate. He rammed his car into the security bollards. He's demanding to see his husband. He says he has the police on the way for kidnapping. My heart stopped. He was here. I looked at Julian with wide, terrified eyes. He brought the police. Julian buttoned his cuffs slowly, his face shifting into a mask of cold, deadly calm. He walked over to the bed and did something that shocked me to my core. He leaned down and pressed a soft, lingering kiss on my forehead. Stay here, Elian, he whispered against my skin. Rest. Let the Alpha handle the pests. He straightened up, checked his watch, and walked toward the door. Tell security to let him in, Julian said to the intercom, his voice like grinding gravel. And tell the police they are welcome to join the show. I think it's time Damien learned that some things are not for sale. He opened the door and looked back at me one last time. Don't come down unless I call for you. Things are about to get messy. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving me alone in the silence. But this time, the silence wasn't empty. It was charged with the electricity of a storm that was about to break. I sat there for a moment, listening to the heavy footsteps of my husband, my ex-husband, storming into the house of his enemy. I looked at the contract on my lap. I looked at the ultrasound. And then, I swung my legs out of bed. Julian had told me to stay. He wanted to protect me. But for 3 years, I had let people make decisions for me. I had let Damien control my narrative. I stood up, swaying slightly, but finding my balance. I wasn't going to hide in a tower while 2 alphas fought over my fate. I walked to the door, opened it, and stepped out onto the landing of the grand staircase. Below, in the marble foyer, the scene was chaos. Damien was there, his tuxedo disheveled, his face red with rage, restrained by 2 of Julian's massive security guards. Julian stood in front of him, hands in his pockets, looking bored. Where is he? Damien screamed, struggling against the guards. I know you have him, Thorn. Give me my husband. Your husband. Julian raised an eyebrow coolly. Strange. According to the gossip columns you were so chatty with an hour ago, you are amicably separating. Which is it, Damien? Is he your husband, or is he a liability you were trying to shed? That's none of your business. Damien spat. I want Elian. Now. I'm right here, Damien. My voice was quiet, but it echoed through the cavernous hall. Everyone froze. Damien's head snapped up. Julian turned, his eyes widening slightly with surprise, and then pride. I stood at the top of the stairs, clutching the railing. I was wearing one of Julian's silk robes that I had found on the chair, which swallowed my frame, but I held my head high. Damien's eyes scanned me, looking for injuries, looking for something. When he saw I was unharmed, his relief was instantly replaced by anger. "Elian," he barked, his voice echoing the command he used earlier. "Get down here. We are leaving. You have caused enough of a scene for one night." I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel the pull to obey. I didn't feel the love. I just felt tired. I took a deep breath, placing a hand protectively over my flat stomach. "No, Damien," I said, my voice steady. "I'm not going anywhere with you." Damien looked like I had slapped him. "What did you say?" I said no, I repeated, taking a step down. "And by the way, you can stop worrying about the divorce papers. Julian's lawyers are already drafting a response." Damien's face turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. He looked from me to Julian, and then his eyes locked on my hand, the hand resting on my stomach. His eyes narrowed. He remembered the balcony. He remembered my whisper. "Elian," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous, trembling whisper. Are you pregnant?" The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bones. I looked him dead in the eye. "I am," I said. "But don't worry, Damien. It's not your concern. After all, you never wanted a distraction from your empire." End of Chapter 2. Part 3. "I am," I said. "But don't worry, Damien. It's not your concern. After all, you never wanted a distraction from your empire." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. For a heartbeat, the only sound in the massive foyer was the distant wail of sirens growing closer and the ragged breathing of the man who was still legally my husband. Damien's face went through a kaleidoscope of emotions. Shock, disbelief, and then something far more terrifying settled into his features. A cold, possessive hunger. It wasn't love. It wasn't joy. It was the look a dragon gives to a pile of gold it had forgotten it owned. "My heir," Damien whispered. The anger drained from his stance, replaced by a terrifying, calculated calm. He straightened his jacket, shaking off the grip of Julian's security guards as if they were merely dust on his lapel. He took a step toward the stairs. Toward me. "You are carrying my heir, Elian. That changes everything." The entitlement in his voice made bile rise in my throat. He didn't see me. He didn't see the person he had hurt. He saw a vessel. He saw a legacy. "It changes nothing," I said, my voice trembling slightly despite my best efforts. "You wanted a divorce. You wanted me out by morning. You got your wish. That was before." Damien snapped, his composure cracking for a second. He took another step, his pheromones flaring, a sharp, acrid scent of burnt wood and ozone that used to make me submit, but now just made me nauseous. "You cannot keep my child from me. That baby is a Blackwood. He belongs in the penthouse. He belongs with his father." "He has no father." A low, dangerous growl vibrated through the room. Julian moved. He didn't run, he blurred. In a split second, he was at the bottom of the stairs, positioning himself as a physical wall between Damien and me. His back was to me, broad and protective, radiating waves of heat that pushed back against Damien's cold aura. "You forfeited the right to that title when you told your lawyer to throw a pregnant Omega onto the street because he was boring you," Julian stated, his voice calm but laced with lethal intent. "Get out of my house, Blackwood." Damien glared at Julian, his hands curling into fists. "This is kidnapping, Thorn. You are holding my pregnant husband hostage. The police are outside. I can have you arrested." "Let them come in," Julian challenged, spreading his arms. "Let the police see the state he's in. Let them see the medical report Dr. Aris just filed, documenting extreme stress-induced hypertension caused by your emotional abuse. Let's see who the press sides with. The billionaire who discarded his mate at a gala, or the man who saved him from passing out on a cold balcony." Damien hesitated. He was a businessman first, an alpha second. He knew when a deal had gone sour. He knew the optics of this were a disaster waiting to happen. If the medical report went public, if the world knew he almost caused a miscarriage. The blue and red lights of the police cruisers flashed through the frosted glass of the front door. The doorbell rang, sharp and intrusive. Damien looked up at me one last time. His eyes were dark, promising a storm that was far from over. "This isn't over, Elian," he said, his voice soft but carrying clearly up the stairs. "You think Thorn cares about you? You think you're safe here? You're just a pawn to him, a trophy he stole from me. But you'll come back. You always do. And when you do, you will never leave my sight again." He turned sharply on his heel. "Open the damn door," he barked at the security guard. As the heavy oak doors swung open, revealing the confused police officers, Damien put on his mask instantly. He looked at the officers with a practiced look of concern. "Officers, thank God," I heard him say as he walked out. "My husband is confused. He's having an episode. But Mr. Thorne has agreed to let him rest here for the night. I will return for him in the morning with his doctors." The door slammed shut, cutting off his lies. I stood frozen on the stairs, my knuckles white as I gripped the banister. He's coming back. He's going to take the baby. He's going to lock me away. "Elian." I flinched as Julian turned around. He looked up at me, his golden eyes searching my face. The rage that had been directed at Damien was gone, replaced by a raw, naked concern. "He's gone," Julian said softly. "He can't touch you here." He said. My voice broke. "He said I'm just a pawn. That you're using me." Julian let out a heavy sigh. He walked up the stairs slowly, telegraphing his movements so as not to startle me. When he reached the step below the landing where I stood, he stopped. We were at eye level now. "Damien projects his own darkness onto everyone else," Julian said. "He views people as assets and liabilities. He can't conceive that someone might help you simply because—" He paused, looking away for a second, a rare moment of vulnerability. "Simply because it was the right thing to do." He looked back at me. "You should be in bed. You're shivering." I hadn't realized it, but I was shaking violently. The adrenaline was leaving my system, leaving behind a hollow exhaustion. I swayed. Julian reached out, but he didn't grab me. He offered his hand, palm up. "A choice. Let me help you back to the room," he said. "Please." I looked at his hand. Large, capable, scarred slightly on the knuckles. It was the hand of a fighter. But the touch I had felt earlier had been so gentle. I placed my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine, warm and grounding. The walk back to the guest room, Julian's room, my mind corrected, was a blur. I felt like I was walking underwater. Julian didn't let go of my hand until I was sitting on the edge of the bed. He moved around the room with quiet efficiency, dimming the lights, pouring fresh water. He acted more like a nurse than a billionaire CEO of a rival conglomerate. "I can sleep on the couch," Julian said, gesturing to a plush velvet sofa near the fireplace. "Or I can have a guest room prepared in the East Wing if you prefer solitude. But Dr. Eris suggested you shouldn't be alone tonight in case the fainting spell returns. Don't leave." The words left my mouth before I could stop them. I felt heat rise to my cheeks. I don't want to be alone. Not tonight." Julian nodded once, his expression unreadable. "I'll stay. I'll take the couch." I crawled back under the covers, pulling the duvet up to my chin. The scent of the bed, spiced rum and old books, surrounded me again. It was dangerous how safe it made me feel. It was confusing. My biology was screaming that this was a safe alpha, a provider, a protector. But my mind was still reeling from the betrayal of the alpha I had married. Julian took off his shoes and his dress shirt, leaving him in a white undershirt that clung to his chest. He settled onto the couch with a blanket, facing the bed. "Julian," I whispered into the darkness. "Yes, Elian? Why did you say?" I hesitated. "On the balcony. You said you didn't touch another alpha's mate. But you wanted to." The silence stretched for a long moment. I thought he wasn't going to answer. Because Julian's voice came through the dark, rough and low. "From the moment I saw you 3 years ago, I knew Damien was wrong for you. An Omega like you need fire, Elian. You need passion. Damien is ice. He preserved you, kept you pretty on a shelf, but he didn't let you burn. I wanted to be the one to light the match." My heart skipped a beat, a confused, traitorous flutter in my chest. "Go to sleep, Elian," Julian whispered. "You have a war to fight tomorrow. You need your strength." I slept, but it wasn't peaceful. I dreamt of a nursery, a beautiful room painted in soft pastels. I was holding a baby, a little boy with Damien's dark hair, but my eyes. I was happy. But then the walls of the nursery started to close in. The door locked from the outside. I banged on it, screaming for help. Damien was on the other side, laughing. "You're safe here, Elian. You never have to leave. You're mine. The baby is mine." The room got smaller and smaller until it crushed us. I woke up with a gasp, my body drenched in cold sweat. Sunlight was streaming into the room. It was morning. I sat up, clutching my chest. The couch was empty. The blanket was folded neatly. Julian was gone. Panic flared again. Had he left? Had he changed his mind? Had he made a deal with Damien while I slept? The door opened, and Julian walked in. He was fully dressed in a sharp charcoal suit, looking impeccable, as if he hadn't spent the night on a sofa. He was carrying a tray with breakfast, toast, fruit, and herbal tea. But his face was grim. "Good morning," he said, setting the tray down on the bedside table. "Eat. You need the energy." "What's wrong?" I asked, ignoring the food. "Where were you?" "I was downstairs with my legal team," Julian said. He pulled a remote from his pocket and pointed it at the large flat-screen TV mounted on the wall. "And watching the news." "Don't," I said, a feeling of dread settling in my stomach. "I don't want to see." "You have to," Julian said firmly. "You need to know what we are up against." He turned on the TV. It was tuned to a major news network. The headline at the bottom of the screen made my blood run cold. "Breaking news, the billion-dollar baby." The screen showed a press conference taking place on the steps of Blackwood Industries. Damien was there, looking tired, humble, and devastatingly handsome. He was acting the role of the worried, devoted husband perfectly. "I ask for privacy during this difficult time," Damien was saying to the microphones. "My husband, Elian, is suffering from severe hormonal imbalance and mental instability due to the pregnancy. He has been influenced by a rival who seeks to exploit his fragile state to hurt my company." A reporter shouted a question. "Mr. Blackwood, is it true you are filing for custody?" Damien looked directly into the camera. It felt like he was looking right at me in the bedroom. "I am filing for an emergency injunction," Damien said, his voice cracking with fake emotion, "to bring my husband home and ensure the safety of my unborn child. I have received credible threats that Mr. Thorne intends to use my heir as leverage. I will not let that happen. Elian, if you are watching this, please, come home. We love you. The nursery is waiting." The screen went black as Julian turned it off. I stared at the blank screen, horror washing over me. He turned it around. He made himself the victim. He made me look crazy. "He played the hysterical Omega card," Julian said, his voice tight with anger. "It's a classic move. He's trying to invalidate your competency. If the court believes you are mentally unstable, he gets immediate custody of the unborn child. He gets power of attorney over you. He wants to lock me up," I whispered, the nightmare coming back to me. "He wants to control me until the baby is born, and then he will discard you and keep the child." Julian finished the sentence for me. I looked at Julian. "What can we do? He has the press. He has the narrative. Everyone believes him." Julian sat on the edge of the bed. He reached out and took my chin in his hand, forcing me to look at him. His touch was firm, grounding. "He has the lies," Julian said fiercely. "But we have the truth. And we have something he doesn't expect." "What?" "We have your voice," Julian said. "For 3 years, you've been the silent ornament on his arm. He doesn't think you can speak. He thinks you're weak. He thinks you'll crumble under the pressure and come running back to the safety of his cage." Julian leaned in closer, his golden eyes burning into mine. "Are you weak, Elian? Are you the pathetic creature he told his lawyer you were?" Something inside me snapped. The fear, the panic, the sorrow. It all coalesced into a hard, burning knot of anger. I thought of the pregnancy test. I thought of Damien's cold, "I don't care." I thought of the years of silence. "No," I said. My voice was stronger this time. "I'm not." "Good." Julian stood up, buttoning his jacket. "Because my publicist is setting up an exclusive interview. Live. Tonight. In 1 hour, you're going to walk out those doors, holding my hand, and you are going to tell the world exactly what happened on that balcony. Live." I swallowed hard. "But the contract? The NDA?" "My lawyers have found a loophole," Julian smirked, a vicious, shark-like grin. "The NDA covers company secrets. It doesn't cover domestic abuse. It doesn't cover attempted abandonment." He extended his hand to me again. "Get dressed, Elian. It's time to burn his narrative to the ground." I looked at the breakfast tray, then at the suit Julian had laid out for me at the foot of the bed. It wasn't the soft, white, submissive clothes Damien always made me wear. It was a deep midnight blue suit, sharp and tailored. A power suit. I threw the covers off. "I'll be ready in 10 minutes, I said. Julian's smile softened into something proud. "That's my boy." 1 hour later. The flashing lights were blinding as we stepped out of the Thorne estate gates. There was a sea of reporters, cameras, and microphones. The noise was deafening. Julian kept his arm around my waist, a heavy, protective weight. I wasn't walking 2 steps behind him. I was walking beside him. We reached the podium that had been set up. Julian stepped up to the microphone first, silencing the crowd with a single glare. "You all heard Damien Blackwood's fairy tale this morning," Julian's voice boomed. "Now you're going to hear the truth." He stepped back and gestured for me to take the stand. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I looked at the cameras. I imagined Damien watching this from his office, smug and confident. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of spiced rum from Julian's jacket next to me, and I leaned into the microphone. My name is Elian Blackwood. I started, my voice ringing out clear and steady. And yesterday, my husband didn't ask me to come home. He asked his lawyer how quickly he could get rid of me. A collective gasp went through the crowd. I looked straight into the camera lens, channeling every ounce of pain and anger I had. Damien Blackwood doesn't want a husband, I said, my voice hardening. And he doesn't want a father. He wants an incubator for his legacy. But I am not an incubator. I am a father. And I will die before I let him turn my child into another cold, heartless statue in his collection. I paused, letting the silence stretch. And regarding the divorce, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the papers Julian's team had drafted. I held them up for the cameras. I'm not waiting for him to file. I'm filing first, on the grounds of adultery. The crowd erupted. I felt Julian's hand squeeze my shoulder. I had dropped the match. Now, I just had to watch Damien burn. But as I looked across the street, past the blinding flashes, I saw a black limousine parked in the shadows. The window rolled down just an inch. I couldn't see the face, but I saw the eyes. Cold, furious, and smiling. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A single text message. Unknown number. Well played, Elian. You found your voice. But you forgot one thing. The prenup you signed 3 years ago. Check clause 14B. You just admitted to adultery on live TV by leaving with another alpha. You didn't just burn me. You just handed me full custody on a silver platter. The blood drained from my face. I looked at Julian, who was smiling triumphantly at the press. He didn't know. I had walked right into the trap. End of Chapter 3. Part 4. The phone in my hand felt like a live grenade. Clause 14B. Adultery. Full custody. The roar of the crowd, the flashing cameras, the triumphant grip of Julian's hand on my shoulder. It all faded into a dull, terrifying buzz. I stared at the black limousine parked in the shadows across the street. The window rolled up slowly, sealing Damien away, but his presence lingered like a poisonous gas. I had just told the world I was leaving my husband. I had just stood next to another alpha. To the public, it was a declaration of independence. To a judge enforcing a ruthless prenuptial agreement, it was an admission of guilt. Elian, Julian's voice broke through the haze. He leaned down, his lips close to my ear, maintaining the image of the protective lover for the cameras. Smile. We're winning. Don't let the mask slip now. We're not winning, I whispered back, my voice trembling so hard I could barely form the words. Read this. I shoved the phone into his hand. Julian glanced at the screen. I waited for the color to drain from his face. I waited for him to curse, to pull away, to realize he had backed a losing horse. But Julian didn't flinch. He read the text, his expression unreadable behind his dark sunglasses. Then, the corner of his mouth quirked up. Not in fear. In amusement. He slipped his arm tighter around my waist, pulling me flush against his side. The sudden contact sent a jolt through me, grounding me in the scent of spiced rum and leather. Keep walking, Julian murmured, guiding me down the steps toward his waiting car. Wave to the cameras. Look at me like I'm the only person in the world. Did you see it? I hissed, forcing a rigid smile for the photographers. He has me, Julian. Clause 14B. If I leave with another alpha, it's considered constructive abandonment and infidelity under the Blackwood family trust laws. He gets the baby. He gets everything. Get in the car, Elian, was all Julian said. The security team bundled us into the back of Julian's armored SUV. The heavy door slammed shut, cutting off the noise of the outside world. The moment we were alone, the smile vanished from my face. I slumped back against the leather seat, burying my face in my hands. I'm an idiot. I walked right into it. I was so angry, so desperate to hurt him, that I handed him the weapon to destroy me. Stop, Julian commanded. It wasn't a shout, but the authority in his voice made me look up. He took off his sunglasses and tossed them onto the seat. His golden eyes were sharp, calculating. Do you really think I didn't read your prenup before I brought you to my house? I blinked. What? I have a team of 12 lawyers who have been dissecting your marriage contract since 4 a.m., Julian said calmly, pouring himself a glass of water from the car's console. Clause 14B is a standard trap in high-profile alpha-omega unions. It defines adultery not just as sexual intercourse, but as the public display of affection or cohabitation with a rival alpha without the husband's consent. Exactly. I cried out. And I just did both. I'm living in your house, And I just held your hand on national television. Yes, Julian nodded. But there is a caveat. A loophole that Damien, in his arrogance, forgot about. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his face inches from mine. The clause is only valid if the marriage is intact at the time of the alleged infidelity, Julian said softly. It is intact. We haven't divorced yet. Legally, perhaps, Julian corrected. But biologically? No. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It looked like a medical chart. Dr. Eris ran a full blood panel on you while you were sleeping, Julian explained. Besides the pregnancy hormones and the stress markers, do you know what else he found? I shook my head, confused. He found traces of a specific suppressor in your system, Julian said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. Synthetic beta blockers. High dosage. My blood ran cold. That's impossible. I don't take suppressors. Damien forbade them. He wanted my scent to be pure. You didn't take them willingly, Julian said grimly. They were in your food. Or your water. For months, maybe years. I stared at him, horror dawning on me. Why? Why would he do that? Because synthetic beta blockers do two things, Julian said, his eyes burning with a fury that terrified me. 1. They make an omega docile, compliant, and less likely to fight back. 2. They mask the natural bonding pheromones. He took a breath, trying to control his rage. Damien wasn't just abusing you emotionally, Elian. He was chemically drugging you to keep you submissive. And in the eyes of the High Court, drugging a spouse constitutes constructive annulment. Your marriage effectively ended the moment he started poisoning you. I felt sick. Physically sick. I thought of the vitamins Damien insisted I take every morning. For your health, Elian. You look pale. He had been drugging me, keeping me weak, keeping me quiet. So, Julian continued, his voice softer now, Clause 14b is void. He can't claim adultery when he had already broken the marriage contract by poisoning his mate. The text message he sent you? It's a bluff. He's trying to scare you into surrendering because he knows that once this medical report gets out, he won't just lose custody. He'll go to prison. I sat there, stunned silence filling the car. The man I had loved, the man I had cried over, was a monster. He poisoned me? I whispered, tears streaming down my face. He poisoned his own child. The blockers aren't fatal to the fetus in small doses, thank God. Julian assured me quickly, reaching out to wipe a tear from my cheek with his thumb. His touch was electric, burning away the cold numbness. But they explain why you felt so helpless. Why you couldn't leave him. It wasn't weakness, Elian. It was chemistry. He caught my gaze. You are not weak. You survived a prison built inside your own body. I looked at Julian, really looked at him. He wasn't just a savior. He was the only person who had ever bothered to look closely enough to see the truth. What do we do now? I asked, my voice hardening. The sadness was evaporating, replaced by a cold, sharp rage. Now. Julian leaned back, a predatory smile returning to his lips. Now we stop playing defense. We go on the offense. The Thorne estate, 2 hours later. The atmosphere in the house had shifted. It was no longer a sanctuary, it was a war room. Lawyers in expensive suits were scattered around the library, reviewing documents. Security guards patrolled the perimeter with increased intensity. I was sitting on the velvet sofa in Julian's office, watching him command the room. He was in his element, ruthless, efficient, powerful. It was captivating. I want the toxicology report released to the press in 1 hour, Julian was telling his head of legal. Leak it to the science journals first, then the tabloids. Frame it as medical malpractice scandal. Don't name Damien directly yet. Let the speculation build. Sir, the lawyer hesitated. If we do that, Blackwood will retaliate. He holds the debt on the chaotic shipment from last quarter. He could call it in. It would cripple our liquid assets. Let him, Julian said dismissively. Money is renewable. Reputation is not. Once the world thinks he drugs his spouses, his stock price will plummet. Then we buy him out. The phone on Julian's desk rang. The red line. The direct line that only a few people had. The room went silent. Julian walked over and picked it up. Thorne. I watched his face. It remained impassive, but his knuckles turned white as he gripped the receiver. Is that a threat, Damien? Julian asked quietly. I stood up, my heart racing. Damien. I don't care what you have, Julian said, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. If you come near this house, I won't call the police. I will handle it the old way. He slammed the phone down so hard the plastic cracked. What? I asked, rushing to his side. What did he say? Julian turned to me. The anger in his eyes was terrifying, but it wasn't directed at me. He knows the toxicology report is coming. He has a mole in the lab. And he said he doesn't need the law to get you back, Julian said. He said he has something that belongs to you. Something you left behind. I left everything behind, I said, shaking my head. My clothes, my jewelry. I don't care about any of it. Not things, Elian, Julian said grimly. He said, tell him I have Oliver. My heart stopped. The blood drained from my face, so fast the room spun. Oliver. I gasped. No, he's lying. Oliver is at the vet. He's been boarding there for a week while we were busy with the gala prep. Oliver was my golden retriever. The only living thing in that penthouse that gave me unconditional love. The dog I had adopted before I even met Damien. Damien hated him, banished him to the kitchen, but Oliver was my baby before this baby. He picked him up, Julian said gently. An hour ago. He sent a photo. Julian turned his phone screen toward me. There was Oliver, my sweet old dog, tied up in the basement of the Blackwood penthouse. He looked terrified, and next to him, Damien was holding a pair of shears, the kind used for pruning roses. The caption read, 1 finger for every hour you don't come home, or 1 paw. Your choice. A scream ripped from my throat. He's going to hurt him. He's going to kill him. I turned and ran toward the door. I didn't have a plan. I just needed to get to Oliver. Elian, stop. Julian caught me before I could reach the hallway. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, pinning my arms to my sides. I struggled, kicking and screaming, blinded by panic. Let me go. He has Oliver. He'll do it, Julian. He's a monster. I know, Julian shouted, tightening his grip. But if you go there, he wins. He locks you up, he drugs you again, and you never see your child or your dog ever again. I don't care. I sobbed, collapsing against him. I can't let him hurt him. Please, Julian. Please. Julian turned me around, holding my face in his hands. His eyes were fierce. Listen to me, he commanded. We are going to get Oliver back. But we are going to do it my way. How? I choked out. We have less than an hour. Damien expects you to come running to the front door, crying and surrendering, Julian said, his mind working furiously. He has his guards focused on the entrance. He wants a show. Julian walked over to his desk and pulled a key from a hidden drawer. He tossed it to his head of security. Prepare the helicopter, Julian ordered. He turned back to me. He thinks he's fighting a frightened Omega. He forgets he's fighting Julian Thorne. He grabbed my hand. Do you trust me? I hesitated. My dog was in danger. My baby was at risk. But looking at Julian, this man who had exposed the poison in my veins, who had stood between me and the devil, I realized I had no other choice. Yes, I whispered. Good, Julian said, his eyes gleaming with a dangerous light. Damien wants a villain? I'll show him a villain. We're not going to knock on his door, Elian. We're going to land on his roof. The Blackwood penthouse, 30 minutes later. The sound of the helicopter blades was deafening as we descended toward the helipad atop the Blackwood skyscraper. It was night now, the city lights a blur below us. Damien wouldn't be expecting this. The airspace above his tower was restricted. But Julian didn't care about restrictions. Stay behind me, Julian yelled over the noise as the skids touched down. The roof access door burst open. Damien's security guards rushed out, guns drawn. Mr. Thorne, one of them shouted. This is private property. Leave immediately. Julian stepped out of the chopper. He wasn't wearing a suit anymore. He was wearing tactical gear, black vest, combat boots. He looked terrifying. I'm here for the dog, Julian said calmly, his voice carrying over the wind. And if anyone points a weapon at me or my consultant again, I will buy this building and evict your families by morning. The guards hesitated. They knew Julian Thorne. They knew his threats weren't empty. Stand down, a voice boomed. Damien stepped out from behind the guards. He was still in his tuxedo, looking unruffled, holding a glass of whiskey. He smiled when he saw me standing behind Julian. Elian, Damien purred. You came, and in such dramatic fashion. I knew you missed me. Where is he? I screamed, stepping out from Julian's shadow. Where is Oliver? The mud is fine, Damien shrugged. For now. Downstairs. But you know the deal. You come inside. Thorne leaves. The dog lives. No deal, Julian said. Damien laughed. You have no leverage here, Julian. You are trespassing. I could shoot you right now and claim self-defense. You could, Julian agreed. He took a step forward. But you won't. Why? Because, Julian smirked, pointing up at the sky. You're live. Damien looked up. Hovering above Julian's helicopter was a second drone. A camera drone. My media team is streaming this to every platform in the country, Julian said with a savage grin. Say hello to the shareholders, Damien. They are watching you hold a dog hostage to blackmail your pregnant husband. Damien's face went pale. He looked at the drone, then at me. You. Damien snarled, his composure cracking completely. You ruined everything. Give us the dog, Julian demanded, stepping closer. Now. Damien looked cornered. A cornered animal is dangerous. His eyes darted around, and then settled on me. A look of pure, unadulterated hatred. You want the dog? Damien spat. Fine. Go get him. He pressed a button on a remote in his hand. A muffled explosion shook the building beneath our feet. Smoke began to pour from the ventilation shafts near the roof door. The basement, Damien smiled cruelly. I rigged the gas line. You have maybe 3 minutes before the fire reaches the kennel. No, I screamed, lunging forward. Elian, wait. Julian grabbed me. He's going to burn. I struggled, hitting Julian's chest. Let me go. Go. Julian shouted to his security team. Secure Damien. Don't let him leave. Julian looked at me. I'll get Oliver. You get back in the chopper. No, I'm coming with you. You're pregnant. Julian roared, the alpha command in his voice making me freeze. Get in the chopper. I promise I will bring him back. Without waiting for an answer, Julian sprinted toward the roof door, diving into the smoke-filled stairwell of the enemy's castle. I stood there, watching the man I was falling for run into a burning building for a dog he didn't even know, while the man I had married stood there laughing. End of Chapter 4. Part 5. 3 minutes. 180 seconds. That was the lifespan of a miracle. That was how long it took for a fire to consume oxygen, for a building to shudder, for a life to be extinguished. I stood paralyzed on the helipad. The wind formed the rotors, whipping my hair across my face, stinging my eyes. But the tears blinding me weren't from the wind. They were from the black, choking smoke billowing out of the roof access door. The door Julian had just disappeared through. Julian! I screamed, the name tearing from my throat like a physical wound. I lunged forward again, desperate to follow him, to do something. Mr. Blackwood, get back. The pilot jumped from the cockpit, grabbing my arm. He was an alpha, strong and immovable, but his face was pale. You can't go in there. The structural integrity is failing. Let me go. I fought him, scratching at his tactical vest, sobbing. He went into the fire. He went for my dog. I have to help him. You have to protect the child, the pilot shouted over the roar of the helicopter and the ominous rumbling beneath our feet. Mr. Thorne gave me a direct order. If anything happens to him, I am to get you out of here. Alive. I went limp in his grip. If anything happens to him. I turned my head. Damien was standing near the edge of the roof, held firmly by 2 of Julian's security operatives. He wasn't fighting them. He was watching the smoke, a twisted, euphoric smile plastered on his face. He looked like Nero watching Rome burn. He's not coming back, Elian, Damien shouted over the noise. His voice was gleeful. Even a prime alpha can't breathe smoke. He's dead. And the mud is dead. And you are all alone again. Shut up, I screamed, a surge of pure, molten rage replacing my fear. He is 10 times the man you will ever be. He's a corpse. Damien laughed, the sound manic. And look at the bright side. With him gone, the adultery charge sticks. I win. I always win. Boom. A dull, heavy explosion rocked the building. The floor beneath us buckled. A geyser of orange flame shot up from the ventilation shaft, illuminating the night sky like a signal flare from hell. My knees hit the concrete. No, I whispered. The word broke. No, no, no. The drone hovered above, its green light blinking, broadcasting my heartbreak to the world, broadcasting Damien's crime. But what did justice matter if Julian was gone? I stared at the black doorway. It was a gaping mouth of darkness and death. 1 minute passed. Nothing. 2 minutes. Damien started to chuckle, low and dark. Told you. Roasted. My hand went to my stomach. I closed my eyes. Please, I prayed to whatever deity listened to Omegas. Please don't let him leave me. I just found him. I just started to breathe. And then a sound. A cough. Rough, wet, and violent. I snapped my eyes open. A figure emerged from the smoke. He didn't walk, he stumbled. His tactical vest was scorched. His face was blackened with soot. Blood was trickling from a cut on his forehead, mingling with the sweat and grime. But in his arms, wrapped in his own fire-resistant jacket, was a bundle of golden fur. Julian. I broke free from the pilot's grip. I didn't care about the smoke. I didn't care about the danger. I ran. Julian fell to one knee just as I reached him. He was gasping for air, his chest heaving painfully. He looked up at me, his golden eyes bloodshot but alive. Fiercely, defiantly alive. I. Julian wheezed, coughing again. He carefully lowered the bundle to the ground. The jacket moved. A wet nose poked out. Then a whimper. Oliver. He was shaking, terrified, smelling of smoke, but he was alive. He licked Julian's soot-covered hand. I threw my arms around Julian's neck, burying my face in his ruined shirt. I didn't care about the smell of smoke. Beneath it, I could still smell him, spiced rum and leather. The scent of life. "You idiot," I sobbed, clutching him so tight my nails dug into his shoulders. "You absolute idiot. You could have died." Julian groaned, wrapping one arm around my waist, holding me just as tightly. "I told you," he rasped, his voice sounding like gravel. "I promised." He coughed again, wincing in pain, but he forced himself to stand, pulling me up with him. He didn't look at me, though. He looked past me. At Damien. The smile had vanished from Damien's face. He looked like he had seen a ghost. His skin was gray. "How?" Damien stammered. "The gas, the explosion." Julian wiped the blood from his forehead with the back of his hand. He walked toward Damien. Every step was heavy, deliberate, and terrifying. The security guard stepped back, sensing the violence radiating off him. Julian didn't say a word. He didn't read him his rights. He didn't wait for the police who were now storming up the stairwell behind the smoke. He pulled back his fist and drove it into Damien's jaw. The sound was sickeningly satisfying, a crack of bone meeting justice. Damien crumpled to the ground, unconscious before he even hit the concrete. Julian stood over him, his chest heaving. He looked at the drone camera, which had descended closer to capture the moment. "Filming over," Julian growled. He turned back to me, his adrenaline fading. He swayed. "Julian." I reached out to steady him. "I'm fine," he muttered, but his eyes were losing focus. "Just little smoke inhalation." "We need to get you to a hospital," I said, panic rising again. "Pilot, help me get him into the chopper." "No hospital," Julian gritted out, stubborn even when half-conscious. "Home. Dr. Eris has equipment. I'm not leaving you alone, not yet." The Thorn Estate, 2 hours later. The chaos of the roof felt like a fever dream. The flight back had been a blur of me holding an oxygen mask to Julian's face while Oliver rested his head on my knee, whimpering softly. Now, the master bedroom of the Thorn Estate had been turned into a makeshift trauma unit. Dr. Eris and 2 nurses were working on Julian. He had second-degree burns on his arms and back, and his lungs had taken a beating. I stood in the doorway, washed and changed into fresh clothes, but feeling dirtier than ever. I watched them bandage the man who had walked into fire for me. "He's stable," Dr. Eris said, walking over to me. He looked exhausted. "His alpha healing factor is kicking in. The burns will heal without scarring in a few weeks. The lungs will clear up in a few days. He just needs rest. Heavy sedation." "Can I see him?" I asked quietly. "He's sleeping," the doctor said gentle. "But he wouldn't stop asking for you until the sedatives took hold. Go sit with him. It will calm his pheromones." I walked to the bed. Julian looked different when he was sleeping. Younger. Less guarded. The harsh lines of his face were smoothed out. I sat in the chair next to the bed and reached out, taking his hand. It was bandaged, but his fingers were warm. "Thank you," I whispered into the silence of the room. "Thank you for saving us." Oliver limped into the room, his fur still smelling faintly of smoke. He curled up at the foot of the bed, resting his chin on Julian's feet. My heart swelled. My dog had already chosen his new alpha. I looked at my phone. It had been blowing up for hours. Trending #1 worldwide. Hashtag Justice for Elian trending #2. Hashtag Damien Blackwood Jail trending #3. Hashtag Julian Thorn Hero. The video from the roof had been viewed 50 million times. The toxicology report about the suppressors had leaked 20 minutes after we landed. Blackwood Industries stock had crashed by 40%. The board of directors had issued a statement suspending Damien effective immediately. Damien was in police custody, charged with arson, animal cruelty, reckless endangerment, and attempted murder. It was over. We had won. So why did I feel this knot of dread in my stomach? The door to the bedroom creaked open. It was Marcus, Julian's head of security. He looked grim. "Mr. Elian," he whispered, "I need you to come downstairs. There's a visitor." "A visitor?" I frowned. "Who?" "It's 2 a.m. "It's Damien's lawyer," Marcus said. "He says he has a message that can't wait." I looked at Julian sleeping. I didn't want to leave him, But I was done hiding. Stay with him, I told Marcus. Don't let anyone in this room. I walked down the grand staircase, my hand resting on my stomach. I wasn't the scared boy who had run from the gala anymore. I was the man who had watched an empire burn and survived. In the foyer stood a short, balding man in an expensive suit. He looked nervous. He was holding a briefcase. Mr. Blackwood, the lawyer nodded. It's just Elian, I corrected him coldly. And you have 5 minutes before I have security throw you off the property. Your client tried to kill me. My client is in a difficult position, the lawyer admitted, wiping sweat from his brow. But he is a resourceful man. He sent me to offer a deal. A deal. I laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. He's going to prison for 20 years. I don't need a deal. I have the evidence. I have the public. You have the criminal case, yes, the lawyer said, opening his briefcase. But the civil case regarding custody? That takes years. And while Damien sits in his luxury holding cell, he can drag you through the mud. He can freeze your assets. He can force paternity tests that take months. He can make sure that baby is born in a courtroom, not a nursery. Get to the point, I snapped. The lawyer pulled out a single black flash drive. Damien is willing to sign full divorce papers uncontested. He is willing to give you full custody. He is willing to sign over 50% of his liquid assets as a settlement. He will plead guilty to the arson charges and take a plea deal for a reduced sentence. I stared at him. It sounded too good to be true. Damien never surrendered. What does he want in exchange? I asked suspiciously. He wants you to convince Mr. Thorne to drop the corporate espionage lawsuit he filed an hour ago, the lawyer said. And he wants you to watch this. He placed the flash drive on the table. What is it? It's a recording, the lawyer said. From the night of the gala. Before you arrived. My stomach turned. I don't care what he has to say. It's not Damien speaking, the lawyer said softly. It's Julian. I froze. What? Just watch it, Elian. Then decide if you want to sign the deal. The lawyer stepped back. I hesitated. I looked up the stairs, toward the room where Julian lay sleeping. The man who saved me. The man who loved me. Trust him, my heart said. Everyone has secrets, my mind whispered. I picked up the flash drive and plugged it into the laptop sitting on the hall table. A video window popped up. It was security footage from the Blackwood Gala, time-stamped 2 hours before I had arrived. The camera angle was from a secluded corner of the bar. Julian was there. He looked impatient, checking his watch. And then Damien walked into the frame. They didn't look like enemies. They didn't look like men who wanted to kill each other. They stood close, heads bowed in conversation. I turned up the volume. The timing has to be perfect, Thorne. Damien's voice came through the speakers clear as day. My stocks are plateauing. I need a scandal to shake out the weak investors so I can buy back the shares cheap. A messy divorce is good. A divorce involving a rival? That's gold. And Elian? Julian's voice asked. He sounded cold. Calculated. Not the warm voice I knew. Elian is the bait, Damien said. He's weak. He'll run. I need someone to catch him. Someone to play the hero. The public loves a savior narrative. It will drive the media frenzy. Julian took a sip of his drink in the video. So I swoop in, save the neglected husband, and we turn this into a media circus. The stock crashes, you buy it back, and then we split the profits from the merger of our tech divisions. Exactly, Damien grinned. And after the dust settles, you give him back. I'll pay you a consulting fee of $50 million. Julian paused. He looked at the camera, almost as if he knew it was there. Done, Julian said. Make him cry, Damien. Make sure he runs right into my arms. The video ended. The silence in the foyer was deafening. I stared at the black screen. My entire world, which I had just started to rebuild, shattered into a million jagged pieces. The bait. The hero narrative. $50 million. It was all a game. The balcony. The rescue. The protection. Even the fire. Was the fire part of it too? No, the fire seemed too real. Maybe the game had gone wrong. Maybe Damien went off script. But the beginning was a lie. Julian hadn't been watching me for 3 years because he loved me. He had been watching me because I was a target, an asset. I felt like I couldn't breathe. The betrayal was a physical pain, sharper than any knife. Mr. Blackwood, the lawyer asked tentatively, do we have a deal? I looked at the lawyer. I looked at the stairs. The man upstairs wasn't my savior. He was just another alpha playing with his food. I closed the laptop with a snap. Get out, I whispered. Sir. I said get out. I screamed, grabbing a vase from the table and hurling it at the wall. It shattered, the sound echoing like a gunshot. The lawyer scrambled back, terrified. I'll be in touch. He ran out the door. I stood there, shaking. I walked up the stairs slowly. My legs felt like lead. I pushed open the door to the bedroom. Julian was still sleeping, his chest rising and falling rhythmically. He looked so peaceful, so innocent. Liar, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. I walked over to the bedside table. I picked up the glass of water and splashed it onto his face. Julian gasped, waking up instantly. He sat up, groaning in pain, blinking water from his eyes. Elian, he asked, confused, his voice hoarse. What happened? Are you okay? I stood at the foot of the bed, staring at him with dead eyes. The deal is done, Julian, I said coldly. You can stop acting now. Julian frowned, wiping his face. What deal? What are you talking about? The 50 million, I spat the words at him. The merger. The hero narrative. I saw the video, Julian. I saw you shaking hands with him. Julian went still. The color drained from his face, beneath the soot and the bruises. Elian, he said, his voice pleading. Let me explain. That was before I knew. Before you knew what? I interrupted, stepping back as he tried to reach for me. Before you knew I was pregnant? Or before you realized you could hurt him more by keeping me? No. Julian tried to get out of bed, but his legs buckled. He fell to his knees, clutching the bed frame. It started as a deal, yes. I admit it. I wanted to destroy his company, and he wanted a PR stunt. I agreed to play the part. But the moment I saw you on that balcony, the moment I smelled your distress, the deal died, Elian. Everything I did since then was real. The fire was real. My fear was real. How can I believe you? I cried, my voice breaking. You're just like him. You're all the same. I turned around. I'm leaving. You can't. Julian wheezed, trying to stand up, pain etching his face. It's not safe. Damien has. Damien is in jail, I said. And you are dead to me. Elian, please. Julian shouted, extending a hand. I love you. I stopped at the door. Those 3 words. The words I had wanted to hear for so long. I looked back at him. Broken, burned, kneeling on the floor. If you loved me, I said softly, you wouldn't have made me a part of your game. I walked out and slammed the door. I grabbed my coat. I grabbed Oliver's leash. I walked out of the Thorn estate and into the cold night. I didn't know where I was going. I had no money. I had no home. I was pregnant and alone. But as I reached the gate, a black car pulled up. The window rolled down. It wasn't Damien. It wasn't the police. It was a woman I had never seen before. She had silver hair and eyes that looked frighteningly like Julian's. Get in, Elian, she said. Her voice was commanding, not asking. Who are you? I asked, stepping back. I'm Julian's mother, she said. And if you want to save my son from the mess he's made, and save your unborn child from the war that is coming, you need to come with me. Now. I looked back at the house. I looked at the car. I opened the door and got in. End of Chapter 5. Part 6. The interior of the limousine was silent as a tomb. The air conditioning was set to a chilling temperature, or maybe I was just cold from the shock. I sat huddled against the door, clutching Oliver's leash like a lifeline. Across from me, Eleanor Thorne sat with the poise of a queen. She poured herself a drink from a crystal decanter, the ice clinking softly, the only sound in the moving car. Drink, she said, sliding a glass of amber liquid toward me. It's apple juice and ginger. Good for the stomach. You look like you're about to be sick. I ignored the glass. Where are you taking me? To a safe house, Eleanor said, taking a sip of her whiskey. Because right now you are a liability. And my son is lying in a bed with second-degree burns, thinking he has lost the only thing that matters to him because of a misunderstood video clip. Misunderstood. I snapped, the anger flaring up again. I saw it. I heard him. He agreed to treat me like bait. He agreed to the $50 million. You saw what Damien wanted you to see, Eleanor said calmly. She placed her glass down and pulled a tablet from her bag. Damien Blackwood is a master of editing. He cut the recording right after Julian agreed. She tapped the screen and held it out to me. Watch the rest. I didn't want to. I wanted to stay angry. Anger was easier than the crushing weight of heartbreak. But my eyes were drawn to the screen despite myself. It was the same video. The same bar. The same conversation. Done, Julian said in the video. Make him cry, Damien. Make sure he runs right into my arms. This was where the first video ended. But this time it continued. Damien laughed and turned to leave. But as soon as Damien's back was turned, Julian's face transformed. The cold, calculated mask shattered, replaced by a look of utter revulsion. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small recording device, pressing stop. Then, Julian pulled out his phone and made a call. "It's done," Julian said to someone on the phone in the video. "I'm in. He thinks I'm playing his game. I need you to prepare the legal team. Once I get Elian out of that penthouse, I'm going to use this recording to bury Blackwood for conspiracy and fraud. He won't just lose his husband, he'll lose his freedom." The person on the other end must have asked something, because Julian's voice softened, his eyes looking distant and pained. "I don't care about the risk, Marcus. You didn't see him at the gala. He looks broken. If I don't get him out now, he's going to die in that marriage. I'd shake hands with the devil himself if it meant getting Elian out alive." The video ended. I stared at the black screen, my breath hitching in my throat. He hadn't betrayed me. He had gone undercover. He had debased himself, shaken hands with the man he hated, just to create an opening to save me. "He recorded Damien," I whispered. "He was building a case." "He has been trying to save you for years," Eleanor said, taking the tablet back. "But the Blackwood contract is ironclad. If Julian had just approached you, Damien would have sued you into oblivion and locked you away. Julian needed Damien to give you to him. It was a gamble, a dangerous one." She looked at me, her silver eyes softening. "My son is many things, Elian. He is arrogant, stubborn, and reckless. But he is not a liar when it comes to his heart. He ran into a fire for a dog because he knew it mattered to you. Does that sound like a man who cares about a merger?" The tears came then, hot, fast, and overwhelming. "I left him," I sobbed, burying my face in my hands. "He was hurt. He was begging me to stay. And I walked out. I told him he was dead to me." "Then we better hurry back," Eleanor said, tapping on the partition window. "Driver, turn around. The Thorne Estate, 3:30 a.m. The drive back felt like an eternity. Every red light was a torture. When the car finally pulled up to the gates, I didn't wait for the driver to open the door. I scrambled out, Oliver barking happily as he recognized the house. I burst through the front doors. The foyer was empty, the shattered vase still on the floor where I had thrown it. I ran up the stairs, my heart pounding in my ears. "Julian." I pushed open the bedroom door. The bed was empty. Panic seized me. The four-pole was knocked over. The sheets were tangled. "Where is he?" I shouted, spinning around. A nurse ran out of the bathroom, looking terrified. "Mr. Elian. Thank God. He woke up and realized you were gone. He tore out the IVs. He said he had to find you." "Where did he go?" "The garage," the nurse stammered. "He took the motorcycle." My blood ran cold. He had burns on his arms. He was sedated. He was in no condition to drive a car, let alone a high-powered motorcycle. Damien's penthouse, I realized. He thinks I went back to him. I turned and ran back down the stairs. Eleanor was just entering the hall. "He's gone," I told her, my voice shaking. "He went after me. I need a car. Now." The city bridge, 3:50 a.m. It was raining now. A cold, relentless downpour that slicked the city streets. I was in the back of Eleanor's limousine, my face pressed against the glass, scanning the highway. We saw the flashing lights before we saw the accident. Traffic was stopped on the Great Suspension Bridge leading to the city center. Police cars and an ambulance blocked 2 lanes. "No," I whispered. "Please no." I opened the door before the car fully stopped, ignoring Eleanor's protests. I ran into the rain, my shoes slipping on the wet asphalt. I pushed past a police officer. "Let me through. That's my husband." I didn't correct myself. The word just slipped out. And then I saw it. The black motorcycle, skidded on its side, sparks having scorched the pavement. But there was no body on the ground. "Elian." The voice came from the edge of the bridge, near the railing. I turned. Julian was standing there, leaning heavily against the concrete barrier. He was soaked to the bone, his bandages unraveling, his white shirt clinging to his skin. He looked like a ghost. He was staring at the dark water below, lost in a daze. "Julian." He lifted his head. When he saw me, his knees seemed to give out. I caught him. We collapsed onto the wet pavement together, the rain mixing with the tears on my face. "You're here," he rasped, his hands gripping my coat, searching, checking if I was real. I thought you went back to him. I was going to burn the prison down. I was going to." "Sure." I held his face, kissing his rain-slicked forehead, his cheeks, his lips. "I didn't go back. I know the truth." Eleanor showed me the rest of the video. "I'm so sorry, Julian. I'm so sorry I didn't trust you." Julian let out a shuddering breath, resting his forehead against mine. "I don't care. You're safe. You came back. I'm never leaving again, I promised, pulling him tighter. You're my alpha, Julian. You're my home. In the middle of the rain, surrounded by police lights and curious onlookers, he kissed me. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was desperate, claiming, searing with the heat of a bond that had been tested by fire and lies and had survived. 6 months later. The courtroom was silent as the judge flipped through the final pages of the verdict. I sat in the front row, my hand resting on the swell of my stomach, which was now impossible to hide. Julian sat next to me, his hand covering mine. His scars had healed, leaving only faint, rugged lines on his forearms that I thought made him look even more handsome. Damian Blackwood sat at the defense table. He looked small. The months in jail awaiting trial had stripped him of his expensive suits, his stylists, and his arrogance. He wore a drab orange jumpsuit. His hair was graying. He looked at me, but there was no fire in his eyes anymore. Only defeat. In the matter of the people versus Damian Blackwood, the judge's voice boomed. On the counts of arson, attempted murder, corporate fraud, and spousal abuse, this court finds the defendant guilty on all counts. A ripple of noise went through the gallery. Damian Blackwood is sentenced to 25 years in a maximum security federal facility, without the possibility of parole for the first 15 years. Furthermore, his parental rights are hereby permanently terminated. Full legal and physical custody of the unborn child is awarded to Mr. Elian Thorne. Elian Thorne. I had changed my name legally last week. Damian didn't scream. He didn't shout. He just slumped in his chair. As the bailiffs moved to handcuff him, he looked back at us one last time. He looked at Julian. Then he looked at my stomach. For a second, I thought he would say something cruel. But he just shook his head, a ghost of a bitter smile on his lips, and looked away. He knew. He had lost not because of money, or lawyers, or schemes. He had lost because he never understood what it meant to love something more than himself. Julian squeezed my hand. It's over. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 6 months. It's over. 3 months later, the nursery. The nursery was painted a soft sage green. It didn't look anything like the cold, museum-like room Damian had planned. This room was filled with stuffed animals, soft blankets, and the warm, golden light of the late afternoon sun. Oliver was sleeping on the rug, his tail occasionally thumping in a dream. I stood over the crib, looking down at the tiny miracle sleeping inside. Leo Julian Thorne. He had Damian's dark hair, but when he opened his eyes, they were bright, curious, and kind. He had my nose. He was perfect. I felt strong arms wrap around my waist from behind. Julian rested his chin on my shoulder, looking down at our son. He's finally asleep? Julian whispered. For now, I smiled, leaning back into his warmth. He has your stubbornness. He refused to go down until I read him the story 3 times. He has excellent taste, Julian chuckled, kissing the sensitive spot behind my ear. How are you feeling? Tired, I admitted, but happy. Terrifyingly happy. I turned in his arms to face him. The nightmare of the balcony, the fire, the courtrooms. It all felt like a lifetime ago. Thank you, I said softly. For what? For seeing me, I said. That night on the balcony. You could have walked away. You could have let me fall. Julian shook his head, his golden eyes filled with that intense, overwhelming love that still made my knees weak. I could never let you fall, Elian, he said. Gravity doesn't work that way for me. You are my center. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I know we did things backward, Julian said, looking suddenly nervous. We moved in together, we fought a war, we had a child. But I never asked you properly. He opened the box. Inside was a ring. Not a flashy diamond like the one Damian had used to mark me as property. This was a band of gold, inlaid with wood, warm, organic, and real. Elian, Julian said, will you marry me? For real this time. No contracts, no mergers, no cameras. Just us. I looked at the ring, then at the man who had burned the world down to keep me safe. Yes, I whispered, tears prickling my eyes. 1,000 times yes. Julian slipped the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly. As we kissed, Leo stirred in his crib, letting out a soft coo. Oliver woke up and trotted over, wagging his tail. We stood there, the 4 of us. A family, not built on bloodlines or legacy, but built on love, courage, and the choice to save each other. I looked out the window. The city lights were twinkling below, the same view I had once looked at with despair. Now they just looked like lights. They couldn't hurt me. I was safe. I was loved. And for the first time in my life, I was free. The end.